It's the new year, and I'm excited to jump back into things. I'm going to share my screen, and then we will get our time going. Um, Slideshow. So we're at session 5, 5 of 7 months. So it's kind of exciting. We're kind of rounding the end. Today is really all about mapping value chains. So yeah, I'm excited to jump into it. I'm hoping to here are our objectives. Continue to get to know each other. I had a question from somebody recently about like how do you actually use this, and so I thought we could talk just briefly about like what it means to actually use it in your work, and we'll talk more about that. Reflect on any demand research and market opportunities people are thinking about, and then learn about how and why to map a value chain. But first, we'll do our monthly icebreaker. I thought we would talk about our favorite winter activity today. Um, so yeah, I'll start. Still Melissa Levy at NATO. I do all the wealth creation stuff at NATO. And my favorite winter activity. I have a few. I like downhill skiing. I like cross-country skiing. I like snowshoeing, and I like sitting in and reading. And Jenna's here too. Um, Hi, Jenna. Welcome. We're just doing intros, kind of doing our icebreaker, which is your favorite thing to do in the winter. So, oh, there's more people coming. Excellent. Wow. All right. Hi, Ian. I was just saying we're opening up with icebreakers, which is your favorite winter activity. So I will pass it along to Colleen.
Okay, sorry.
Hey.
Just doing 700 things at the same time.
Yeah, of course.
I'm Colleen Nelson with the Lake Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board. And I guess I would have to say my favorite thing is doing puzzles and,
Oh,
doing indoor things with my daughter because she's always busy. So
yeah.
we did take her
Cool.
snow tubing, so that was fun.
Oh, that is fun. I feel like there aren't that many places around here to snow tube, but yeah. Anyway, thank you, Colleen. Cassidy.
There we go. There we go. Can you hear me okay? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I'm a little under the weather.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry.
my name is Cassidy Cameron, and I'm the Executive Director for the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District in Alaska. And one of my favorite things in the winter is, well, we snow machine here. Everybody calls it snowmobiling down in lower 48, but it's snow machine. So we like to get outside and get to play in the snow and skiing, snowboarding, outside, snowshoeing, all of those good things to at least make the winter not so long.
Sounds familiar. Yes. Edwin, you probably don't have a lot of snow there, but go ahead.
Hi, Edwin from the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council. Yeah, I was about to say definitely no snow activities here. I guess I started a tradition. We put up a projector that we had in our living room, and we invited some of our neighbors to watch some Christmas movies, like the Polar Express. So that was fun.
Oh,
We
cool.
close all the windows in the house, make it dark like an actual movie theater. So that was fun.
Wow.
I think I'm
That
gonna
is
start doing
fun.
that more often during
Very cool.
Christmas. Yeah.
Nice. I was actually down your way for Christmas. I was
Oh
in
yeah.
Titusville. So
Yeah,
uh,
I'm sure the weather was crazy for you. Cold
the
some days,
weather
super
was
hot
really
others.
nice, actually. It
Yeah.
was beautiful. I know it's kind of right after we left, it started to get cold.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's always interesting to
Yeah.
be in a warm place for Christmas. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
we barely get fall, so whenever I see a
Yeah.
tree turning orange, I'm like, okay, finally.
All right, Jenna.
Hi, my name's Jenna Kramer. I'm with the North Central Planning Commission in North Central Pennsylvania. It gets quite cold and snowy up here. I'm not a fan of the winter weather. I'm a warm weather person, so I like to escape down to Florida, hop on a plane, and go visit my family in Florida for the winter. So I'll actually be
Okay.
down there this weekend visiting my parents and my cousins.
Okay, and we're in Florida.
They're on the East Coast, near Melbourne. Melbourne,
Uh-huh.
Sebastian,
Yeah.
Cocoa. I have
Yeah.
family in multiple places.
Cool. Yeah, my in-laws are in Titusville, so not far from
Mhm,
Cocoa or the Space Center or any of that.
mhm.
But yeah, cool. All right. Ian, good to see you.
Hi, good to see everyone. Happy New Year. I'm Ian McCain. I'm with City of East Point Economic Development Manager. We're mid-size inner ring suburb of Detroit. I know my colleague David, who invited me to join this cohort, said he might be a few minutes late coming from another meeting. So, and was the icebreaker question your favorite like winter activity, or is that okay?
Yeah.
I don't know about my favorite winter activity, but something I'm looking forward to, and we've done with my family for a number of years, is we'll rent a cabin, no electricity, but they do have propane heaters at a state park that's about an hour away from us. So it's a nice opportunity to go on some winter hikes, sit around the fire, play card games and board games in the cabin. So looking forward to that in mid-February.
Nice. That sounds lovely. All right, and Jared.
Yeah, so I am someone who actually really loves the winter. So heading up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and getting snowed in at our off-grid cabin. We went up over Christmas, my wife, I, a cat, and dog, and we had a
Oh, wow.
snowshoe in about half a mile. And I don't know, it's fun going out in the wilderness and hauling in firewood and all that kind of stuff. So the only problem is they have started having more cougar sightings in the county that we're in, so that freaks my
Mhm.
wife out a little bit. But I don't know, people scare me more than wildlife.
Yes. Well said. Um, okay, well, great. We'll jump back into this presentation. I appreciate you all kind of were going with the flow with these. I just think it's helpful to like, I don't know, get to know each other a little bit. So as usual, I like to just bring back our principles of wealth creation. We're talking about creating wealth, rooting it in local places and people and businesses through local ownership, control, and influence, and building livelihoods for those on the margins. And again, these are our 8 capitals. I just kind of like to, I don't know, bring them back up. Um, but today, before we get into value chain mapping, I had a conversation with Sharon the other day, and she was, um, and I feel like it's so interesting because I feel like when WealthWorks first started, it was all about value chains and not everybody needs to build a value chain, in my opinion. So I've been trying to figure out ways that it can be built into our work, kind of all the time. And so the way I've been thinking about it is looking through a lens. So like ever since I've been doing wealth creation, it's just like the way I see the world now is like I'm constantly thinking about what kinds of wealth are in different places and how we can keep that wealth local. Um and so typically when I work with a community with WealthWorks or wealth creation, wherever you want to call it, I usually start with, you know, kind of inventory. Like, what do we have? Like, what do we have to work with? What are the assets that we have? And I use the 8 forms of wealth to kind of frame that conversation. So sometimes I'll put big sheets on the wall for each of the forms of wealth, or I've done it a lot of different ways, but that's kind of generally where I start. And then, the other thing, and I guess I did put together a slide. So these are just some of the ways I've used it. So we already talked about it in your SEDS. You can actually kind of create, a framework of 8 capitals across these different elements of the SEDS. In an actual community, like I said, I start usually with the inventory or sometimes work on the SWOT with a community, even if it's not for a SEDS, even if it's just a community that wants to explore wealth creation. Like we will think about what we have to work with. I mean, the nice thing about the SWOT is it allows for those opportunities, right? It kind of identifies potential opportunities that you can then continue to use wealth creation to strategize around. So for instance, like supporting sectors in your region. We didn't talk a lot about that, and I'm actually going to remedy that as we move forward. But one thing that multiple folks I've talked to or trained in this have talked about is just the idea of collaboration, about getting sectors and folks in sectors and businesses to collaborate for mutual benefit. We talked a little bit about this idea of co-opetition, which is that, businesses in a particular sector can still compete, but they can also collaborate for mutual benefit, such as, collaborative purchasing. There's a great example in Idaho with the wine industry where the EDD actually brought the sector together to figure out what their challenges were and that could they be solved collaboratively. So one idea was cooperative purchasing. They could get better deals if they worked together on their purchasing. They also worked together on like workforce development. They worked with their local colleges and universities to create programming that would benefit the sector. And that was a collaborative venture. So these are just some of the conversations that you can have in a particular sector in your region and bring those folks together to figure it out. Partnerships. Partnerships, I mean, can be useful in any of these endeavors, whether it's your SEDS, the sector collaboration piece, the value chain stuff. The building partnerships is critical to all your work, right? I mean, that's what EDDs are doing. So engaging partners with strengths in different areas, so different areas of the economy, different capitals, to build wealth and keep it local. I think those partnerships can be useful over time, right? In a lot of different ways. So that's one thing. And then supporting, we've been talking about market opportunities. Bringing partners together is key to identifying what the gaps are in those value chains and how to fill them through entrepreneurship, for example, or other methods. And then I would argue, I've used wealth creation and just organizational strategic planning. I've used it in a ton of different ways. So I guess Sharon was having trouble figuring out like how she could incorporate it in her work. And so we'll talk more about this, and I want to kind of hear your thoughts too, but these are just my preliminary thoughts on how I've seen it be used. Not only at the EDD level, but at the community level, which is when I'm on the ground using it, typically I'm with a community or a county, and I'm helping them figure out how to use it. But that's not to say that you all can't be the ambassadors for your communities and your counties. So, and I still think, EDDs are using it in a variety of different ways, including most, if not all of these ideas. But I'd love to build out this list some more. This was just I had this conversation with Sharon and I was like, I think I probably should address this. So, but I guess the other point down here is like viewing all your work through this lens. Maybe it doesn't necessitate like actually doing a particular thing, but seeing what you're doing through this lens can be really helpful, because it may help you figure out how to tweak what you're doing to build more wealth. And so that's another way to think about it, is if you're constantly looking at your work through this lens of building wealth, keeping it local, and building livelihoods, inevitably you will find tweaks that you can make to your work that will help accomplish these goals. So it doesn't have to be a whole project. I think sometimes it can just be like this thing in the back of your mind that's telling you, oh, well, if we did it this way, it would build another form of capital for our region. So anyway, does that is that helpful? I was talking to her and I was like, we should talk about this, and we will. We have a few more sessions left, and I want to kind of keep talking about this particular piece, is like, what does it mean to do it where you are? And, are there ways that I can help support you in thinking about that? So I'm going to move us along. So here we are, we're at value chain development, which is, we're going to talk about value chain mapping, and then next time, or next month, we'll talk about identifying those gaps and bottlenecks in the chain, and like, how do you fill them? Any questions before I move us along? Okay. All right. So I'm going to just refresh our memories about what it means to be demand driven, because value chains are demand driven. So this means that you know your demand partners, understand what they need, and help them understand what you need to be able to meet their needs. So it's about understanding that market opportunity, who are the buyers, and what is it that they want that you can provide. And organizing your value chain to meet the needs of those folks, while naturally creating wealth, keeping it local, and building livelihoods. So wealth creation value chains, this is the tool that we use. This has always been a big part of the wealth creation framework. Now, based on what we just talked about, it's not the only thing. But I do want to share it, and I want us to practice it. But like I said, you can do wealth creation without doing a value chain, without building a value chain. But it is a framework that we use a lot, and it can be useful if you're thinking about, market opportunities in particular sectors. The idea here is to connect local production to regional demand. So it's really a rural urban kind of, we're trying to make rural urban connections. So the local production is often rural, and the regional demand can be urban, can be rural. This can be used in rural and urban regardless of what this says. But it was developed with the idea of bringing opportunity into rural communities. So a wealth creation value chain, as we define it, is a network of people, businesses, institutions, and nonprofits who collaborate to meet market demand for specific products or services, each advancing individual self-interest while together creating greater local wealth. So basically, this is a variety of different partners coming together to meet market demand. We are talking about some sort of product or service, and I'll show you some examples. And the key to it is this advancing individual self-interest, right? We don't want to admit that we all have self-interest, but we do. And understanding what that self-interest is on the part of all your partners is key to building the value chain. So again, it's building a lot of relationships, which we've talked about previously, but this is, we're talking about community partners, we're talking about demand partners, producers, suppliers. Those are kind of our transactional partners with support partners. EDDs are support partners. So an EDD isn't necessarily going to start this process, but they may be, because you're learning about it, you might be coaching folks who will kind of surface this idea, and you play a support partner role. The idea just broadly is to start with market demand, which we've talked about, choose market opportunities with the greatest wealth building potential, and then connecting the community's assets to that demand. So sometimes you start by serving local demand. Sometimes you find those regional customers and demand partners. There's an example in Minnesota, Region 5 in Minnesota was doing like a food value chain, and they started their value chain by serving local demand. So they realized that there was a need for local food, more local food and local produce. And so they started by serving local demand. And then as that demand was covered, they could actually move out into more of the region. We map the process and the partners from input to end consumer. We'll talk about that. And then we identify the gaps. The gaps are what create opportunities for new entrepreneurs to go into business. So again, we start with demand. We talked about that a little bit. So these are the final consumers or end market, the buyers. And typically when we're connecting with demand partners, as I think we mentioned, we talked about before, we're not necessarily connecting with the end consumer like you and me. We're connecting with those folks, the kind of intermediaries that actually do connect with consumers. So in the case of food, this might be a hospital or restaurants or grocery stores, but they're going to know what people want. So we want to map the functions, the things that have to happen to deliver the product or service from supply to demand. We want to map out the transactional partners. Those are the people, businesses, or organizations that play a direct role. So they're actually touching that product or service. So they're sourcing or aggregating, distributing, processing, purchasing. Those are kind of key players in the value chain. And then the support partners are those people, businesses, or organizations that provide infrastructure, technical assistance, and support that helps the transactional partners to do what they do, which is why EDDs are traditionally support partners, because you all have the knowledge and the connections and sometimes the funding to provide technical assistance, support with infrastructure, coaching, things like that. This is a very basic example that I'm just going to share with you, and then I'll share some real ones. But this is kind of our very basic value chain map. And I feel like I may have shared it before, but in the blue, you can see the demand partners. This is a tomato soup value chain. So you can see the demand partners, again, are those aggregators, right? The hospital is serving its patients, school district is serving students and faculty, and then the area consumers are generally being dealt with through grocery stores, wholesalers, restaurants. And you can see here in the green, these are our transactional partners. So we've got the growers, the aggregators, the processor, and the distributor. So those are all touching either the tomatoes or the other ingredients of the tomato soup or the tomato soup as a whole. And then the yellow are our support partners. They're supporting these transactional partners. And they're all connected, right? And then the coordinator can either be a separate organization, or it can I've actually seen it where one of the transactional partners decides to coordinate the whole chain. And the reasoning is they see it in their best interest to keep the process going. The coordinator plays a lot of different roles, but the biggest is just making sure they understand what the value propositions are for each of these partners, and also just making sure that this is everyone's communicating and everyone's getting what they need out of this. So this is very basic. They all look different. And I'm going to share some more examples so you can see what, real ones look like. Yeah. So this is one from Oregon. This is a local food value chain. You can see here the these ovals on the left are our demand partners. And you can see that the black and the kind of lighter blue are our transactional partners. So you can see, I'm not sure what the difference is between these, but I think this blue part is kind of another pathway. And then you can see in gray are all the support partners. So you can see Extension, Department of Agriculture, there's financial institutions and marketing and things like that. So again, and they're showing the connections between partners, which is also really useful to understand who's connected and who's not. This is one from, I think, Michigan, actually. And they were doing a trails value chain. So you can see here on the in red, the demand partners, they've got, again, the kind of consumer demand partners. We'd want to think about who the aggregators were for each of these. And then I like this, they've got underutilized assets. A big part of wealth creation is repurposing underutilized assets. And then they've got their transactional functions in yellow and their supporting functions in blue. And the cool thing that I remember about this is they actually had a database behind this. So like these are very general kind of what's in the boxes are very generic, but behind the scenes, they have an actual database with who fits into these boxes. So it's kind of interesting. You don't get at the connections between partners here, but it's just another way of doing it. This is a outdoor recreation tourism value chain I worked on in Western New York. Again, you can see the demand partners on the right. I like this, they've got like their assets on the left here in green, like what they have to work with, which I thought was kind of brilliant. And then they've got their transactional partners in yellow and their support partners in blue. And what we did, I facilitated this value chain mapping. We had about 80 people in the room. The coordinator, the person who was kind of coordinating, just invited everybody. And that was quite interesting because the other great thing about value chain mapping is that it allows people to see where they fit. You want to engage partners, but if they can't see themselves in this map, then they may not be interested. So that was the neat thing about this meeting is everyone, I think at one point we kind of mapped it out and then we had everyone share where they will fit, what their role was in the value chain map, which is kind of empowering. And it also is just an even better way to create partnerships. The other thing we did here is we actually, once we mapped it, we actually outlined what the gaps were. And so you can see here, these pieces that are outlined in like black were the gaps. There were a lot of them, a lot of gaps. And, but so we realized that we couldn't tackle all of them. So we actually spent some time prioritizing, and you can see those with the red dots, the ones that we wanted to work on first. And then we actually we created working groups around each of these priorities. And so people could self-select what was most important to them to work on. And so this was a really great, one of the best kind of experiences I've had in value chain mapping was this. Okay. This is the example from my friend who was supposed to join us, but I think I told a couple of you that she came down with COVID. So I'm hoping she'll join us at one of our next couple of calls. But this is in New Hampshire. It was a recreation value chain. So you can see again in the blue are our demand partners. She's got trail clubs, guides, tourists, second homeowners. And this was really about, she called it human-powered recreation. And then you've got in green are our transactional partners, and then the support partners are in orange. And she actually divided it into kind of like infrastructure, land base, hosts, and then additional services. So, again, these always look different, so there's no right way to do it. It has to make sense for what you're trying to do and what makes sense to you. But you can see, we're talking about recreation, the hosts piece. These are all the ways that recreationists connect with the community, right? Groceries, food, dining, accommodations, campgrounds. And then there's some other, there's land managers and trail clubs and chambers and all of these things. And then a big piece was outfitters and guides. And I had the opportunity to work on this one. And we actually, one of the gaps in this chain was just like information. And so what we did is we actually brought together to strategize around information. We brought together a lot of these folks, not all of them. But one thing that we came up with, and I'm sure Sally will share it when she comes to join us, but we realized that there are all these we're talking about, this was in northern New Hampshire, and pretty rural. And there are a lot of different communities doing really interesting things. So what they started with these recreation after hours events. And the idea was to bring people in the recreation industry together, first of all, to build social capital, but also to learn more about other parts of the region. So each month, a different town would host. There'd be some sort of recreational activity where you'd go for a hike or you'd go for a bike ride or something like that. And then they would have like a happy hour after. So everybody could get to know the offerings in different parts of the region, as well as getting to know each other. So it was really successful, and that is a strategy that came out of this mapping exercise. But there were lots of other ones. That was just one. I think the other one was, there was a lodging strategy. What kinds of alternative lodging could we think about in this region? There aren't a lot of hotels. And there was also a workforce piece. How do we create livelihoods in the recreation industry? Because it's hard. It's not always a full-time job, right? How do you help people cobble together a full-time gig from different kinds of things happening in the region? And training, they had like a training strategy. Anyway, Sally will talk more about it, but this was pretty exciting too. This is another way of value chain mapping, and I wanted to share it just because different ways speak to different people. But this is my colleagues in the Pacific Northwest, Rural Development Initiatives. They use this framework, which is, again, it's pretty similar. They still have supply to demand, but they outline kind of the supporting functions. They also talk about rules and regulations, which I kind of like, because sometimes the sectors that we're working in do have particular rules and regulations around different parts of the chain that we need to be aware of. And so what this looks like, this is a fishing value chain from the Pacific North, from Oregon, I think. So you can see their goals here: increase incomes for small fishing businesses, improve livelihoods for crew members. So they have their really basic flow chart. They've got their demand partners here on the right. And then they've got the core value chain. They were working with small fishing businesses and then connecting with them with wholesalers, processors, markets. And then they've got these supporting tasks, which fishing is so complicated. So there are all of these pieces that they outlined, and then the rules and regulations. So a little bit different, a little bit more linear. Sometimes, yeah, I don't know. Everybody reacts differently to different frameworks, so I wanted to share some different ones. And then tourism and recreation, are often not linear, right? So sometimes it really just looks like a network map. And that's useful too, to understand, if we think about tourism or recreation, it's not like agriculture where it goes through this very linear process from, inputs to the final product. This is a little bit different in that, recreationists and tourists are just kind of interacting with a lot of different stuff. There's no it's can be pretty messy. But you can see here on top are kind of our demand partners. The dark blue are really our transactional partners. So all the different organizations and businesses and institutions that are touching those tourists. We've got the support partners here, economic development agencies, financial institutions, the bureaus, and then we've got some of the legal things, the rules and regulations down here at the bottom. So anyway, I just spewed a ton of maps at you, but I really just wanted to share that there's no one way to do it. I think the key is, identifying and engaging the market players in that map, refining your goals, mapping the chain, identifying and researching challenges and opportunities, and then, revising and revisiting over time. The other thing about value chain mapping is the idea is to map the ideal value chain. It's not necessarily to map what's going on right now. So we want to map it as if it exists, right? As if the value chain is working. That's the only way we can actually identify the gaps. So that's the other thing. So identifying and engaging market players, I talked about these steps. It's really about talking to local businesses and stakeholders in that sector, understanding their challenges and opportunities. A lot of the demand research that we talked about already that's how you kind of start to engage those market players. And then it's almost like a snowball sampling thing. Like as you talk to folks, you ask them who else you should be talking to. And then you just keep doing that until you feel like you have it figured out who the players are. Refining goals. Again, we use our wealth creation principles here. Like in New Hampshire, the recreation example I gave, we started with, I think they wanted to distinguish that they didn't necessarily want more tourists because, again, you can get kind of overrun by tourists, but they wanted to increase the amount of money they were spending. So they wanted them to stay longer and spend more money. So that's a little bit different. And then in Oregon, with that fishing example, it was really about increasing incomes for small fishing businesses and livelihoods. So it wasn't necessarily, in a similar way, it wasn't necessarily about catching more fish, but it was about increasing incomes. So, which could be catching more fish, or it could be getting more money for the fish you are catching. So refining goals is really important and being really specific about what are you trying to gain from building out this market opportunity. And then I talked about this a little bit. This all depends on value propositions. What's the self-interest in engaging? What can we offer that the partners might value? So there's 3 levels. What's in it for me? So self-interest is, I know in some places self-interest is a bad word, but in value chain development, it's pretty important to understand what's in it for each of the partners. The shared interest is what's in it for us together. And then common interest is really what's in it for our region. Like, how is this going to benefit our region? And as I said, it's really important to understand what the value proposition is for each of your partners. Why? How do you convince them to engage? It's by understanding what they're going to get out of it. So how do you figure out what those value propositions are? You have conversations. That's really what those demand interviews were about, was to understand what they're looking for, what they need, to get out of a particular market opportunity. And the same thing for, not just demand partners, but all of your partners, transactional partners, the support partners. it's important to try to figure out why they will engage, what's going to get them to the table, and what they're going to get out of it. So I have this tool I wanted to share, and it's just a way of thinking about partners. I think this is particular focused on SEDS committee, but you could totally use it for any endeavor. This, again, on the website, you'll find this, and it's something that we have used in SEDS is, what kinds of strengths do your current committee members have, and who else might you want to engage in these particular areas, and why would they be interested in participating in your work? How do you engage them? So what's the value proposition? So I know in Region 5 in their SEDS, they use this as a way to make sure that their SEDS committee is diverse in these different capitals. So it's just another tool for your toolbox. And then gaps. The reason that we build the value chain is not only is to develop these partnerships, but also to figure out, like, how do we make this work, right? What are the gaps that we need to fill? So gaps represent opportunities for local businesses to expand or new businesses to fill a function. So we're looking for gaps that will have the most impact, will create the greatest ripple through the chain, what are actually feasible, and where's the energy? Not all gaps, just like I shared with that recreation example in Western New York, not all gaps are as exciting. So sometimes you just have to go where the excitement is too. That I think, oh, and the coordinator, oops. Right. Value chains do not self-organize. So these are some of the things that the coordinator does. They hold and steward the vision of the value chain. They build relationships among and between the partners. They guide the work of the value chain to build multiple forms of capital. They try their hardest to ensure that low-income people, firms, and places participate and benefit. They help manage risk, and they manage information. So everybody understands what's going on. Yeah. And then, right, we want to build rooted wealth, community prosperity, and lasting livelihoods. This is our goal in developing a value chain. So we're looking for different ways to build wealth by filling a gap in the value chain. And sometimes that can be it can be anywhere in the value chain. In this example, creating a waste oil recycling business, that's almost like a waste. We didn't talk about waste, but every value chain has a waste component, and sometimes you can repurpose that waste for something else, and sometimes you can't. Sometimes we want to remove a barrier. We want to build multiple capitals that are rooted in place. These are just some examples from actual value chains. And find ways to include residents on the margins in the activity, like providing entrepreneurial training. Yeah. And yeah, anyway, I know I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. I just spewed a ton of value chain stuff at you, and I know there's probably yeah, I just want to stop to answer any questions you might have about how do we do this, and what it might look like in different places. There's some great case studies and success stories on the WealthWorks website, stories of where this has been done in different sectors. It has been done in a variety of different sectors, from agriculture and forestry, recreation and tourism, housing, energy, all sorts of stuff. But the value chain is a tool, like it's a framework for getting things done. It just helps kind of organize your thinking about who needs to be engaged, how they all fit together. And I'm going to stop talking for a second and drink my tea Any questions, anything on anybody's minds, any particular sectors that you're interested in exploring?
I'll jump in. So,
Yeah.
um, great presentation. You answered one of my questions as I was thinking of it with one of the examples where, we have all these great partners or inputs that we're working with, but sometimes things are going to fall kind of like between different categories. And I saw in one of them you had kind of like a slash, like one section was yellow, one was blue. So I was like, okay,
Yes.
that's a good way to
Yes.
kind of organize it.
Yeah,
So I wanted to
absolutely.
uplift that and also
Oh,
just
good.
mention that David and I were having conversations, and I've been just starting to do some very basic preliminary research on government procurement because I think
Oh,
there's a lot of money that different entities, whether you're talking about a city or county government or a school district, and they, spend it across multiple different entities, but unfortunately, a lot of them end up spending a lot of money on Amazon as opposed to on local businesses and things like that. So,
yes.
how can we draw from maybe there's some local examples or some like statewide or national examples of folks that are putting together kind of more progressive or like buy local procurement policies to make sure
Oh,
that the whatever the local governments need that they're actually purchasing those things from
yes.
local businesses and not from an Amazon or another big
Right.
supplier that isn't necessarily going to miss their dollars but could really benefit a mom and pop shop in your backyard or in the region.
Absolutely. That's so interesting that you say that because I just sat in. I was really curious about it. It's actually in Vermont. I don't know why I don't know more about it, but I sat in on a webinar about it. And it actually has just it's really cool, actually. It's called Mighty. My husband continues to call it Mai Tai. I don't know why, but it's called Mighty. And it actually, they've kind of like they're aggregating a whole bunch of businesses in Vermont so that if you the really cool thing about it is you can install this extension on your browser. So when you search Amazon or like pretty much any other shopping place, when you search on it, it will actually bring up the Mighty thing and show you what's in Vermont. Like, so you can make that decision, right? Like, it'll have a pop-up on Amazon. Well, not on Amazon, but like on your browser that says, you can buy this on Mighty, which is pretty cool that it can do that. But yeah, I think procurement is often a really big piece of value chains, and I love the idea of that. I mean, I think local procurement to me is kind of like low hanging fruit, really, right? Because we all have businesses in our regions. How do we encourage our businesses and our institutions to use them? Um, and certainly we need that more than ever right now. So yeah, anyway, check out Mighty. I think they're actually interested in, you know, bringing their algorithm to other places. So it's kind of an interesting, I mean, and it looks like, I mean, I tested it after the webinar because I was curious. And it was really like you can really search just about anywhere and it will pop it up and show you. And they actually, and the other thing that I don't understand why they do this or how, but they don't charge shipping and they aggregate all the product. Like you can put in an order to a whole bunch of different stores through their platform and they all get aggregated somewhere else. Like they do all the aggregation and then ship it to you for free, which I don't know how that they can make that work, but that's a whole nother conversation. So anyway, that sounds fascinating. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Ian. I appreciate it. Yeah. Anybody else? Anything that's kind of coming to mind or any kind of sectors that you're particularly interested? Um, I didn't put a homework slide on. The idea, my homework was going to be to actually map one just for practice. Again, it can be anything. You can do something you're actually interested in, or you can use any sector in your region as like just a practice exercise. But it's kind of fun. I enjoy thinking about it. But yeah, any other sectors folks are particularly interested in or thinking about? Or any questions about all the stuff I've been spewing at you? Yep.
Yeah, so in Michigan, we have the, oh gosh, what are they? Materials management plans, trying to divert items from landfill and composting and reuse. So looking at waste from
Yeah.
multiple sectors in our region, one came up when I was talking to our Michigan MDAR, Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development.
Uh-huh.
And, they're talking about how there's a big pork producer down in Cass County that they don't know what to do with a lot of the hides and stuff. So it ends up in dumpsters and goes to the landfill. And lo and behold, after that conversation, I get an ad pop up about Ugly Chews, it's called, and it's out of like Wyoming. And they take cowhide and cut it, dehydrate it, and sell it for dog chews.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can we have something local like that in Southwest Michigan that utilizes that waste product that they're paying to ship to a landfill now and make it a viable product? So just got the wheels turning a bit, and I'm sure
That's
there's other
great.
examples.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. I mean, waste is such a great way to think about this too, because there are so many waste products that can be repurposed in different ways. I did a value chain workshop in Ohio for a group of folks in the agriculture uh, sector. So a lot of farmers and economic development organizations. And ended up mapping out 3 value chains, just practice, but real. One was manure, like as waste, right? Like what can you do with that? Can you repurpose that as energy? Another one was waste wool, right? Not all the wool that's taken off sheep is marketable as wool, as fabric, or so we actually did a whole value chain around waste wool, turning waste wool into wool pellets for gardening and agriculture and insulation and things like that. So really, I mean, you can get into really interesting areas thinking about waste. So I appreciate that, Jared. Yeah, anybody else? While we're here, while we have time, if anybody has any other ideas or questions or yeah. Okay. Um, um, oh, and yeah. And I do have some ideas about procurement policies. I will share those when I get a chance for sure. Thanks. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know how I did this without a homework slide. I will add one though. Um, I will add a slide so we have it before I post this on the website. I will add one, but here's where we are, just to show you where we are. We have a call in 2 weeks. I'll hope that Sally can join us either for that one or for the next one, because she's great. She's with the Conservation Fund in New Hampshire, and we did a lot of work value chain mapping around recreation, which was fun. So, and she has kind of internalized it in a way that I'd love to share with you. So yeah, we'll do our check-in 2 weeks. And again, the homework is to, map a value chain, like using whatever framework you want to use. I've shared a lot of different ways of doing it with you. There's no right way. It's whatever way makes sense to you in terms of what it looks like and how it works. And then the next month we'll talk about what do you do with that value chain? Like how do you identify those gaps, bottlenecks, underutilized assets, and then what do you do? And then our last call is really like what's next? Like what's your plan? Are there ways that I can be supporting you moving forward as you integrate this into your work? And yeah, that's what we're doing. Again, the WealthWorks website really does have some great case studies that might be helpful as you think about value chains. There's I can't click on this, but anyway, there's all these different success stories in a lot of different sectors. I don't think we have actual maps up there for each of them, but you can start to see kind of what they look like. I think they do outline some of the partners, which might be helpful. And then as always, the NATO site is all things for EDDs. And registration is open for the Wealth Creation Summit. So if you're interested, I'd love to see you in Bend. I know it's, for some of you, it's really far. For me, it's really far. And not the easiest place to get to, but I'm told it's extremely beautiful. And I'm excited about it. So, if you can and you want to, the registration is open on the website, and it's in April 14th to the 16th. That's it. So I am going to stop and see if there's any other questions on anybody's minds before I let you go. Any other questions? Anything that's confusing? I know I just like the value chain mapping piece is there's just a lot. A lot of examples, but I will share the PowerPoint with you so you can look at those maps a little bit more, which might help too, just to understand how they work and what is going on. So, yeah. Okay.
With the Will Summit, do you know
Yep.
when draft agenda will be put online? Just trying to make sure that I'll fit in with what we're doing and
Oh, yeah.
justify it with.
Yeah. There's a very basic, like more skeletal agenda on the website right now, so you can see when things are. I'm hoping to I'm like chipping away at the sessions right now, but I'm really excited about it. So yeah, I can put together, I can probably get something more up there that will show more of the topics, if that's helpful. I'm not sure I'll have all the speakers lined up for another few weeks, but yeah, I will see if I can share that. And maybe I can just share with all you guys like my working agenda so you can see, but just realize it's a work in progress. And it's not completely filled out, but it'll give you a sense of what we'll be doing at each time. I'm really excited about it. We have on Wednesday, we're doing mobile workshops in the afternoon, which we're in the midst of planning. We have a half day on Thursday with this meeting is in collaboration with Rural Development Initiatives, which is a WealthWorks hub in the Pacific Northwest, and their big conference. So our conferences are going to overlap for our last day and their first day. So, which is kind of exciting. So it'll be a lot of folks from that area of the country. But yeah, I will share my working agenda with you guys if you will keep it to yourself. And I will try to get one up there that has a little bit more detail for you all too. But yeah, thanks for the question, Jared. I'm pretty excited. The last one was pretty well received. We do some really cool interactive workshops, which will be fun. We'll do some SEDS workshops. We'll do some value chain mapping, and we'll probably use the new game I worked on. So try to incorporate as much interactive stuff as we can. So yeah, all right. Yeah.
Melissa, I also have a question about the summit. Are there any scholarships that are available to attend?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I don't think we have any. I mean, the registration is it's only $100. But I recognize that the travel isn't cheap. But yeah, we don't, I'm sorry to say we don't have any scholarships, but that's something I should think about. I don't know if I have the funds for that, but I will see what I can do.
It's okay. I can also put a bug on SEMCOG's ear and see.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I know people are coming. Somebody reached out. I think somebody from the UP was reaching out about how he was bringing a few staff people. Um, so yeah, who knows? Yeah, we'd love to see you. But yeah, let me see. There should be some way I can incentivize you all since you've been working with me over the past few months. So yeah, let me see what I can do. But as of now, there's nothing I'm aware of. But yeah, all right. It's great to see you guys. I really appreciate you, and I'm excited to see those maps. So, yeah, so if you have something to share for our next call, that'd be great. I think it'd be fun to see the beginnings of some maps would be fun. So, that's our homework. So, anyway, thanks everybody. Happy New Year, and love the conversation. Thanks for the questions, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Have a
Thanks.
good one, guys.
Thanks, bye.